All right, so let's go. Just got done listening to the Degon interview with Perkz. Want to give some E0120 raw thoughts on it. We've been trying to figure out what's going on with Cloud9 this split, because it's an expectation to come back from MSI and be slumping, just from being exhausted, being behind practice on the current patch, yada yada. So I've been thinking actually for the past few weeks that Blabber was the issue. Blabber is the only player left on that team that I think would not be able to conform to 3 European tough mindset players, and Mithy, Zven, and Perkz. And Perkz is going to be very demanding. Grabs and everyone on G2 has given us insight to how that team just would argue and go back and forth on things, just with how passionate they all were about winning and figuring out like what was the best way to win, yada yada. I don't see Vulcan as someone with weak mind, and Fudge has been one of the standout players on the team for most of the split. I don't think that kid has a weak mindset at all, especially if you're going to be prescribing to the Church of LS. And so for me, at least, I've just left Blabber out as like the weak point, or the point on the team that was holding them back, or holding back the playstyle that Perkz and the team might have been pushing for. Because it's been made very clear from subtle insights and stuff before even the Perkz interview came out today that the entire Cloud9 like team is just in a shit show of trying to figure out like how they want to play and who wants to play which way. And so props up to Degon for the interview and landing such a great explanation inside of just 10 minutes with Perkz about just breaking down how there's like, you know, XYZ, you know, play styles or set plays or comps, and they're just, you know, not able to really speak to that or play to that, so they end up playing X like Z and so on. Go give the interview a watch. But what I'm hearing out of Perkz, and what Perkz was talking about, was that he's going to stick to how and pushing for how he wants to play the game, which I actually imagine is a much more creative and G2 heyday-esque style of playing the game. Much more skirmishy, much more wave manipulation, cross-map plays. Like I think G2 is trying to turn Cloud9 into, or I think Perkz is trying to turn Cloud9 into the G2 that he came from. And I think that's where what we're seeing right now on an LEC to LCS basis is that G2 has lost its identity that Perkz gave them, with creativity across the map and really being able to just find ways into games, find ways back into games, like have rough early games, but still like their mid game was just super strong, and their late game you just couldn't stop them. And so I think what we're seeing is the greatest transfer of talent ever in the West through just one player in Perkz. And I think that's just being clarified even more. And so the question I actually was thinking about after listening to that interview is asking the question, is Zven and Mithy playing with the same Perkz they came up with? Because Blabber could be a problem. Blabber could just be wanting to play too NA, too simple, or something like that. I don't think anyone else in the team would be asking for exceptionally simple play. I'm sorry, the rest of them are just too hungry. Vulcan is clearly still one of the top supports in the region, and unless Zven is just heading for the retirement home faster than anyone else thought, I don't see him backing down from playing more creatively, unless, and this is where we get to that Zven point, unless Zven is like getting a little too NA in his expectations of play, and or was never of the mindset that would have even complemented the G2 2019 roster. Because it was, I'd have to like check timelines or something like that, but it may not even have been possible with Zven and Mithy in G2 that we could have had the legendary G2 that we had in 2019 and 2020, regardless of like the Caps transfer. Like, yeah, you lose Zven and Mithy, you have the Hjarnan Wadid year, but you come back with Perkz going bot lane, Mickey X as your support, and Caps taking in mid lane, and then we have a golden age for the West in a way. But it just doesn't. If you put like Zven and Mythi's personalities there in the bot lane, like, can you pull that off still? Can you still have that level of international success and just that kind of just pure incredible dominance? So it's just one of those vacuum questions that's not going to work out. So I kind of want to keep focus on this Zven question. Is Zven possibly, like, who on this roster is actually like too rigid in how they want to play, or have a simple way of playing the game, that the integration of the G2 Perkz, we're going to call it just artistic, creative, improv League of Legends, is that just not allowed to exist because of the personalities on the team? Because it's not clear to anyone, so we're just going to run on speculation. Like, is because my thought I had leading for a while on my speculations was that Blabber couldn't get high enough in his conceptual understandings and integration of those concepts into his play, and ends up just taking these early fights, these bad fights, into an enraged Renekton on level like 3 Diana, and throwing at Crab and stuff like that. Like, Blabber has been my guess as like perhaps one of the challenging parts of the team, and so it's like, well, what happens if it's actually someone else? What happens if it's Perkz versus 2 people, 3 people on the team? So does this roster like carry on if this year doesn't end up like going incredibly well, because they did win a title? So I kind of wanted to throw that out there to anyone that wants to like postulate with it. Is Zven playing with the same Perkz, and is Mythi playing with the same Perkz from their dominant period back in Europe? Because it's possible that one or both have changed so much that a serious question has to be asked, is if their perspectives on the game and their perceived ideal play styles of the game in its current form, can they match up well enough for C9 to salvage the rest of this year? So yeah,